Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. So for the lead up to the new Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker, I've decided to go back and look at the other two films that come previous to this film. So today I'll be looking at Force Awakens. This was directed by J.J. Abrams and stars Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and a variety of others. This is a film, when I first saw it was filled with nostalgia, and I sort of got swept up in it, and I couldn't really see, to begin with, what everybody was talking about, how it was a carbon copy of the original Star Wars, A New Hope. And it wasn't until my second viewing I got to see this. But for me, by the third viewing, it was just an entertaining movie. But revisiting now, I just don't seem to quite care about it as much as I did before. I think there's a lot of elements I enjoyed about the film. I like the opening in the film. I like the fact we're set on this planet. Oscar Isaac's character is trying to gather information to find Luke Skywalker to help the Resistance ultimately defeat the New Order. And this whole sequence is really great. It's beautifully shot. You can really get a sense of what's going on. You get to be introduced to this particular character and what's transforming. And ultimately, when Kylo Ren appears, he's really fantastic. I love the mask. I love that Adam Driver's playing Kylo Ren. He's really tall and sort of overpowering, and he's sort of calm and collected. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Darth Vader, and I think that's what they were going for. And he's really cool and a fascinating character to begin with. But ultimately, when it's revealed he's a young man hidden beneath this thing when they take the mask off, I think that's where the character loses its intimidation, and they should have kept the mask on all the way through until the end of the film, because it just would have created that feeling of dread and that feeling of you're not quite sure who this person is and what they're capable of. I know that would have been too much like Darth Vader, but that's sort of what they were going for. They might as well embrace that and go with it. So the start sequence I enjoyed a lot. When we first meet Rey on Jakku, it took a little while for me to get into this character. I really didn't sort of care. It felt too much like Luke Skywalker. And when he was on Tatooine and wanting to leave the planet, where this is a bit different. She doesn't want to leave. She's sort of waiting. She's waiting for her parents to reappear. And she's been there for years, but nobody has come back for her. And she still holds out hope. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I love when she's going through Jakku and she's going through the old Death Stars and variety of things that have fallen through the sky and crashed there. I love the look at that. I love the idea, it's really showing that the Empire is dead and that this is the remnants of what's remaining. And she sort of is a scavenger, but she's very highly intelligent. She's able to build things and she knows how to fly spaceships. And she becomes kind of interesting as the film goes along. But that initial meeting of her, I don't know if I really cared too much for her character. And, John Boyega's character Finn, I think is really great. I love the idea of this stormtrooper who goes against what the First Order wants, what they're trying to do, and refuses to kill. And I thought this was a great element to the story. And I think this could have been really the main focus and have Rey appear later in the film, but I thought this could have been really the main focus of the movie to begin with. And having him going against it and wanting to escape it, but I really didn't like the fact that he was fearful of it and he wanted to run, he just wanted to run all the time. I felt he could have become a really great resistance fighter and could have joined them. We could have seen a bit more of behind the scenes of who the Resistance are and how they go about what they do and how long they've been around. That stuff was more interesting to me. So having him feel always running, I didn't really like. I know ultimately the motivation is to help Rey, someone he's created a strong bond with that he wants to protect and help. And I like that. And when these two come together, it's kind of interesting on Jakku, but it isn't until they ultimately have to escape the planet because the First Order's chasing them that they get into the Millennium Falcon. When reintroduced to Millennium Falcon, flies it, and it's sort of reminiscent, but it's too on the nose with so many references to A New Hope that it could have done something different, unique for itself. I like the fact that the way we're introduced to Han Solo and Chewbacca again in a really interesting way, and that ultimately he's coming back for his ship. I like the connection and really like the chemistry between Rey and Han Solo. I think that's really great. I think she could really become a really great pilot, and I would have loved to have seen her join him and then they go on adventures together. I like the whole smuggling concept of Han Solo, and we get to see a bit of his world. We get to go to this particular planet and we see this bar that he goes into and he knows someone in there, and it's sort of in a way very reminiscent, I guess, of A New Hope once again. It's unfortunate that I have to keep going back to that because there's such parallels and such tie-ins that I really feel that they really could have done something different with it. We didn't need to have another character stuck on a crappy planet and needing to get off or become part of the resistance and trying to work out who they are, and other people getting swept up into it. We've seen this many times before, and I could have had a whole movie of just Han Solo and Rey going planet to planet being smugglers with Chewie as the co-pilot and her taking over from Han Solo as a pilot. I really, really like that as well. I thought the scavenger stuff and the sort of smuggling sort of element to it that Han Solo's part of, the world he's part, I thought was kind of really interesting. We got to see more of it, where he's on this big ship and he's been after the Millennium Falcon for so long, and there's these two groups of people who show up that are after him, and he's sort of double-crossed both of them. I kind of liked these elements, and these scenes were really great. I liked the idea of aging Han Solo, that he was still doing what he did, and he couldn't help the person he was. He has been shaped by the experiences that he's had with Luke and Leia and all of that of the previous 30 years ago when they were up against the Empire and Darth Vader. I think it sort of shows where he is now and that he hasn't really changed much. I like the reintroduction of Carrie Fisher. I thought she's really great and really felt like the Princess Leia that we'd known, just older. I like the back and forth between Leia and Han Solo. I really like that. And I like the fact that they are ultimately Kylo Ren's parents, Ben Solo. I really like that. And you could see where he came from. And I like that Luke's just talked about. He's sort of become this mythical figure now. Even Rey says, when they find out about Luke's gosh, she said, I thought that was a myth. So he's got mythical stands on who he actually is. And I kind of like that. I think that makes him a sort of a much more interesting character. And I like when Rey does first meet Han Solo, she knows him as the smuggler, not the general and the resistance against the Empire. I thought that was an interesting element as well. She's been so locked away on this planet for so long that she only knows little bits of information and that she's only interested in things that interest her. I thought that was a fun thing to look at. And as the film progresses, ultimately they have to do things they don't necessarily wanted to do. I think Rey's a really great, strong female character, but there's just things about her I don't think they quite got right. And the idea that she has the Force within her, that she knows how to use it a little bit, just tends to say that she has to come from some sort of Jedi or some sort of person who has these abilities like the others. My opinion really is I think they really were going to make Rey Kylo Ren's sister, because there's just elements added to that. The relationship she had with Han Solo was pretty good and interesting. They didn't really talk much, but they connected really well, and you knew that there was a relatability between the two of them. And ultimately, when she meets Princess Leia and Leia hugs her for a long period of time, that was saying to me that it's her daughter, that she's found a parent, but she just doesn't know that quite yet. And I think this is something they were going to reveal later in the series of movies, but they just didn't quite get there. Or I think mainly it was too much like Skywalker and Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia as brother and sister. So I think they were trying to get away from that as the series went on. But I thought this was something that would make sense, just that she doesn't know this yet and she finds out later in the films. I thought that would have been an interesting, much more interesting element to it. I like the decision in it where Kylo Ren has to make this choice. Either go with his father and become part of the resistance, or kill his father and ultimately succumb to the dark side, and ultimately kills his father. But this is a poignant sort of thing. It's a tough choice for him, but he makes the choice that he believes is right. And he's filled with such anger and fear and frustration that that's what he does to move closer to Snoke, his master. I know Harrison Ford really wanted to kill off, he wanted Han Solo to die in the series, and he ultimately got his opportunity to have that happen. And I thought this was a great passing on the torch to Rey and Finn and the others, and BB-8 as well, and Oscar Isaac's character, Poe. I think he's a really interesting pilot and an interesting sort of character that you learn a little bit about, but he adds a lot of humour, and there's something about his character in this film that was really great. The other thing, we had to get another Death Star, didn't we? And not only did it have to just be a Death Star, it had to be a damn planet. And I just felt that we'd seen this so many times before. They've got to stop making these Death Stars all the time. And there's talk about that in the new one. I just think, do something different. Stop copying the same thing. Star Wars, the Star Wars universe is so massive. You could do anything, and they choose to do another Death Star. I just thought this was a bad choice and bad decision. I like a lot of the action in the film, and I like the lightsaber fight between Kylo Ren and Rey at the end is really great as well. That sets up some really interesting elements. But I just felt overall this film was lacking something. I didn't get the connection that I wanted from it. I didn't feel connected at all to any of the characters or what's going on. Like I said, the only parts I really enjoyed were ultimately Han Solo and Rey on the Millennium Falcon. This stuff was really interesting and great, and I wanted to see much more of it. And I thought this was the main crux of the story that was most interesting. J.J. Abrams is known for, he can create things really well, but he doesn't really know how to end them. So that's what I'm a bit iffy about the last, Rise of Skywalker, what he's going to do with that. And that's my worry for that last film. I think it's beautifully shot though. Some of the sequences are really great. There's a lot of practicality that JJ puts into it. I thought it was a really great element. And there are CGI moments, but they sort of work. I kind of liked that they brought the old characters back, but kind of didn't. I felt they could have done something really refreshing and new and original. And like I said, I felt the Resistance. I would love to see a whole movie about the Resistance. How they performed, how they went against the Empire. We got to see a little bit of in Rogue One, but I want a lot more of that. And I think this is a much more interesting element, and this is the direction you could go. We don't really need to keep having this young person have to become a Jedi all the time, like in these movies and in the game that came out recently. I just feel that we can do something really different and refreshing. And there is multiple storylines and ideas for this Star Wars universe that you could encapsulate and create and be original, unique with. We've sort of become saturated by these, like Marvel films, by Star Wars. The Mandalorian TV series coming out, and there's talk of another film coming out. I just feel that we've been oversaturated with it, and they could create something original and unique content. I kind of like the fact that ultimately Rey sort of becomes the new Han Solo. She pilots a Millennium Falcon. She has Chewie as her co-pilot. And she goes on this quest ultimately to find Luke Skywalker. She's got mixed up in the whole thing that she wanted nothing to do with. And she's going to find him to see if he can get the answers that she requires and to sort of train him. And it ends in a great way where he spins around and she has an arm outstretched with a lightsaber in it to give to him. And it just ends there on this cliff face. I thought that was an interesting choice, but it did feel a lot like when Luke Skywalker goes to meet Yoda on the Dagobah system. So it's very reminiscent of that. So it's hard to watch this movie without thinking of the others. I like the idea of the legacy of the film, the passing on the torch. A whole new generation get to see Star Wars. So for that fact, I'm happy that this film was nostalgic and threw back to that. Because there's a lot of kids when this film came out that hadn't seen the originals and they had no content or relatability to it. So it was fresh and new for them. And I think it was smart in that aspect for those particular viewers to have it closely like New Hope in many ways. The film's still carrying on the idea of family that George Lucas created from the original films. And it's really about relationships, fathers and sons, fathers and mothers, mothers and fathers, it just sort of relationships and bonds and the family that you create for yourself as well. Rey doesn't have any family, so she sort of creates the family with Finn and Han Solo and Chewie and a variety of other characters. And that's ultimately what I felt this film was trying to say. That you can't have the good without the bad. And it is generational. Things continue to happen no matter what. It feels like there's a lack of, in a way, not much hope for things to change. But there's still characters that want to fight against what's happening. They still want to try and do good no matter what, no matter the consequences of what's going to happen. And I think that is something that's been running through Star Wars for a long time. And as a childhood favourite of mine, I really like the Star Wars universe. Ultimately, I just wish this film was better. My next review will be looking at Last Jedi, a film I'm a fan of. I'll get more into that ultimately when I do the review. But I think it's a much superior film to this one. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to do something a bit different, do a bit of analysing videos rather than just reviews and scoring. So this is what I'm trying to do with this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.